It was going to be a peaceful hearing, a routine one, perhaps even dull. A few signatures, a nod from the judge, and everyone could head home, acting like everything was okay. But that's not what happened, because when Mykelti Brown got up out of her chair, faced her father, and spoke in a firm voice, "Stop lying. You destroyed our family." The whole courtroom stopped. No one stirred, no one even breathed. For an instant, you could hear the breaking of hearts, Christine's tearful silence, Janelle's heavy sigh, even the shuffle of Kody's hands as he glanced down at the table. Robyn remained motionless, eyes straight ahead, expression inscrutable, but something shifted in the air. It wasn't a family disagreement anymore. It was reality versus years of silence. Everyone always imagined the Browns to be about unity, about faith, about holding love strong in the midst of turmoil. But what Mykelti uttered that day stripped away all the facade, the show, the smiles, the image of the perfect family, and showed something much weightier beneath. This was never really about a father and a daughter. It was about broken trust, about love that was pushed too thin, and about what happens when people can no longer pretend everything is okay. By the time Mykelti was done speaking, nothing in that family would ever be the same again. And as for Kody and Robyn, their carefully protected image had just cracked wide open. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear isn't gossip. It's the moment a daughter stood up for the truth and a family built on secrets started to come apart, piece by piece. The courtroom was not. A handful of observers stood at the back row, some of the family, a couple of subdued reporters, and a half-dozen production assistants from the network. They're as much by obligation as anything else. The lights overhead were too intense, too motionless, as if they were holding themselves in anticipation of something occurring. And in a sense, they were. At the front sat Kody Brown, spine straight, jaw clenched, arms crossed so tight, they might as well have been glued that way. He said nothing. His eyes continued to wander to Robyn, sitting beside him, his final and sole legal wife. She seemed calm, perhaps even peaceful, with her hands folded neatly in her lap. But if you examined more closely, you'd notice the tightness of her shoulders, the movement of her eyes around the room every few seconds, not nervously, but appraising. Observing, they were waiting for Mykelti. Christine and Janelle sat silently on the other side of the room, not bitter, not angry, just here like they'd already gone through this moment in their heads 100 times. Maybe they had. Mykelti Brown, Christine, and Kody's daughter rose slowly. No theatrics, no fuss. One step at a time towards the middle of the room where the microphone was placed. For an instant, nobody was quite certain if she was going to make any statement at all. The judge adjusted his spectacles and peered down at the document. "Miss Brown," he stated, voice firm, "you wanted to make a statement today?" She nodded once, breathed in, and then, suddenly, everything was different. She didn't yell, she didn't cry, she didn't struggle with her words. Instead, she spoke in a clear, steady, but weighted voice. "I'm sick of the lies," she started out. "I'm sick of seeing people I care about get ripped apart, and everyone smile like nothing's amiss." Kody's face remained the same, but his form changed. A slow breath. Robyn's eyes slightly narrowed, her smile gone. "I used to believe family was everything," Mykelti said, gazing out at no one in general, "that we hold together, that we defend one another, that we show love to everyone equally. But that's not what did occur. That's not what has been occurring for years. I saw my mother cry in a kitchen she no longer could claim as her own. I saw her apologize for wanting attention, for wanting time, for wanting respect." Christine's gaze dropped to her hands. Her lip trembled, but she didn't say a word. "I saw Christmas disintegrate, birthdays miss, promises shatter. But the camera always seemed to catch the good moments, the smiles, the phony dinners, the happily ever after." She glanced at Robyn now, "And I observed you, as well. I observed you becoming the axis of his life. I observed how the rules warped so quickly once you entered, how the tone changed. You didn't bring on all of this, but you were aware, and you remained silent. But it was only the start." There was a rustle in the room, chairs groaned as people shifted in their chairs. There were a few whispers, hastily silenced. The judge remained silent. No one ventured to interrupt her. Mykelti breathed deeply once more. I don't seek revenge. I'm not angry to be angry, but I am broken-hearted. And I've had enough silence. The resulting silence was thick, not dramatic in weight, just real. A truth that doesn't blow, but seeps in slow and deep. Yue, Kino. The kind of silence one has when something that's been hidden for years comes out and everyone in the room knows they can't hide it again. Kody finally looked up, meeting Mykelti's stare. Perhaps he was hoping she would recoil. Perhaps he was hoping she would melt, but she didn't. Her eyes remained steady, unyielding. Robyn shifted in her seat ever so slightly, pushing an imaginary hair off her shoulder, but still remained silent. The mask of calm was beginning to crack. The judge leaned forward, his voice soft. Is there anything else you would like to add to the record? Mykelti nodded the slightest. Yes, just one thing. She turned back to her father. The man on television wasn't the man who walked in. And we all pretended everything was fine. But I'm through pretending. And with that, she backed away. One slow step at a time, back to the seat next to Christine, whose hand came out to squeeze her daughter softly. Hey, it was the first moment of truth uttered aloud, but the courtroom hadn't even heard the worst of it yet. And just when everybody thought the bad news was over, Mykelti grabbed her phone. The silence after Mykelti's statement wasn't just uncomfortable, it was loud, thick with emotion. Kody didn't speak. He didn't even shift in his seat. Christine sat quietly beside her daughter, gently holding her hand. Robyn, still poised, blinked, swallowed, and looked forward like nothing had just happened. But in that moment, it had all been reversed. Mykelti wasn't only speaking for herself, she was speaking for what all those years, so many in that family had known, but never spoken out. The judge leaned back, allowing the moment to settle. Miss Brown, he said tactfully, do you have further information you'd like to provide for the record? Mykelti hesitated not at all this time. Yes, I do. She stood again, not unsteady, not dramatic, just firm. Her voice gentle, but firm. I want to discuss what occurred when Robyn became part of the family, she said. In the back of the room, someone shifted. A pen snapped. But otherwise, the room was quiet. Things weren't perfect before Robyn arrived, Mykelti said. We had issues, of course we did. But there was still a balance. My dad spent time with us. We all felt part of something. Even when it was crazy, it still felt fair. She looked at her father, paused for a moment, and then resumed speaking. But once Robyn came aboard, things changed fast. At first, it was small stuff, more dinner at Robyn's, more weekends, more decisions that just happened without the rest of us even realizing. Christine glanced down again. This is painful. She lived it. She didn't need to hear it, and yet maybe someone else did. Birthdays forgotten. School plays that went unattended. My brothers and sisters didn't ask anymore when Dad would visit. We knew the answer already. He was with Robyn, but what Mykelti went on to say made even the judge cringe. I asked my dad one time why he wasn't going to my graduation planning evening, she said. He told me, "You Robyn needs me more at the moment." Dinner gossips weren't forthcoming, but something more profound were a gentle breath from the woman in the gallery, a soft whisper at the back, the sort of noises people make when the truth is too close to home. You always said that polygamy was about sharing love, Mykelti went on, but it wasn't like that. It was like Robyn got the love, and we received the leaving. This time, even Robyn leaned in her seat. She glanced down for an instant, her fists clenched a bit. Still, she said nothing. I'm not accusing her of everything, Mykelti continued, and her tone mellowed, but she didn't put an end to it. And neither did you, Dad. You allowed the family to break up because it was simpler than accepting the truth. Kody's eyes flashed, but he stayed silent. Perhaps, for the first time in a long time, he didn't have a defense. And just when you thought the most painful part had been said, Mykelti took it one step further. I know you loved her more. We all did. And you could have just said it. You could have been honest. But instead, you told us we were imagining it. You made us feel crazy for seeing what was right in front of us. Her words weren't angry. They were exhausted. Exhausted from all the years of keeping it inside. Exhausted from acting as if she hadn't seen. From swallowing her pain so others could remain at ease. That's not what a father does, she said, her voice trembling, just enough to reveal the depths behind it. That's not what love looks like. The judge cleared his throat, visibly moved. Even he had heard enough stories like this before, but something about this one stuck. Maybe it was the calm way Mykelti spoke. Maybe it was the clear emotion in her voice. Maybe it was because, despite everything, she wasn't here to destroy. She was here to heal. But healing doesn't come without truth. And she had more to give. Zalian, I know there's more to follow, she whispered. But this had to be said first, because we can't go any further until somebody finally owns up to what actually happened. And with that, she sat down once more. For a few tense seconds, nobody said anything. Robyn kept her head bowed. Kody glared at the empty space in front of him. Christine clutched Mykelti's hand a bit more tightly. And then, Mykelti grasped for her phone. For an instant, it seemed like this could all come to a head. The judge picked up his pen. Kody breathed, as if he had just endured something. Robyn cocked her head sideways like she was about to speak for herself. But then, Mykelti pulled out of her purse. She didn't speak first, just took out her phone, held it carefully with both hands, and touched the screen a few times. I wasn't sure that I was going to share this, she said, but I think it matters. The room fell silent once more. You could sense the tension building all over again. But this time, it wasn't about feeling. It was about evidence. She addressed the judge. This is a voicemail. It was left on my phone by accident last year. I never deleted it. She did not say whose voice was on it. She didn't have to. She pressed play. The room filled with the sound of Robyn's voice. Clear, unmistakable. Honestly, I don't know what Christine expects. She was never really part of our family. Kody and I have done everything to hold this together, but at some point, you have to protect what's left. There was a pause. Robyn must have thought the call had already ended. Then another line. Besides, Kody has always been more emotionally attached. Everyone knows that. And the voicemail finished. But the harm had already been inflicted. The courtroom fell silent. But this time it wasn't emotional. It was true. This wasn't interpretation. This was proof of everything Mykelti and her siblings had sensed for so long. Kody's face was inscrutable, empty, as if he'd abandoned his body. Robyn gazed down slowly, pursing her lips. Still no tears, still no apology, just silence. Christine shifted in her seat, but not with shock. She had lived this. It was just that now, someone else had at last listened too. I didn't play that to embarrass anyone, Mykelti whispered, setting her phone down. I played it because people need to stop acting like this was ever fair. We all knew. We were just forced to feel crazy for speaking it aloud. And that's when the change actually occurred. The judge leaned forward slightly, his hands on the lip of the bench. His tone remained firm, but questioning. Miss Brown, he asked softly, how long did you feel this rift in the family structure? Mykelti's gaze did not falter. Since I was 15, she replied. That's when I began to notice the difference. The way decisions were made, where attention focused, the way my mom had to ask, sometimes beg, for a conversation. She glanced at Kody. You didn't even notice. Or perhaps you did. I'm still not certain which is worse. That sentence, I don't know which is worse, hung there in the air like fog. Dense, lingering, true. Janelle blinked hard but didn't say anything. The others were quiet too. Even the reporters at the back had laid down their pens. Everyone was listening because what Mykelti had done in that instant wasn't personal at all. It was larger. She had pulled back the curtain on years of unspoken agony, of favoritism no one would name, of a family dynamic that pretended to be in alignment with unity but was founded upon emotional disparity. She didn't yell, she didn't accuse, she spoke truth, and that, in some way, cut even more. Barce, but one last punch was headed our way, and nobody saw it coming. Waited after I heard that voicemail, Mykelti explained. I didn't share it with my mom immediately. I waited for weeks. I didn't know what to do. I thought maybe it wasn't anything. She paused. But then I began to think about all the times that didn't add up. How my mom was treated, how my siblings were disregarded, how dad gave up trying. She turned and faced Robyn squarely, and how you smiled about it all. Robyn looked at her now. No more evasiveness, but no words emerged, only the hum of the air conditioner in the room. I'm not here to break anything, Mykelti told her, one final time. But if this family is ever going to be honest again, then we can't just keep lying for one another. We have to tell it, all of it. Eh? And as she sat down again, folding her hands in her lap, it became clear to everyone in the room, click, Mykelti's words still hung in the air long after she sat down. She didn't speak again. She didn't have to. The silence in the room was louder than any shouting match could have been. Kody rested back in his chair, not like a resting man, but like one who had been struck in the chest. Yellion. His arms, which had been crossed so tightly in command, were now a bit more relaxed at his sides. It was as though the very framework of who he believed he was had begun to warp. Robyn, for once, had no more calm to present. Her face had changed. Not dramatically, not outwardly emotional, but softer, as if she'd finally realized the weight of what Mykelti had carried into this room. Christine reached out and rested her hand on her daughter's knee. No words, just a small gesture of love, the kind that didn't need to be explained. And then Mykelti had spoken again, softly, slowly, and this time not for the judge, not for the camera, not for the record, for herself. "I never stopped wanting to believe in you," she told her father, "even when I saw what was going on, even when Mom was hurting, even when you weren't there." Kody regarded her now, truly regarded, not the cold defensive stare earlier, but with something that was almost like recognition. "You were my hero when I was a little kid," she went on. "You were huge, powerful, humorous. You made the world seem secure." Her voice trembled, not with rage, but sorrow. "And then I got older, and things changed, and you changed, and I kept telling myself it was just temporary, that maybe things would get back to the way they were." Christine shut her eyes. The hurt in those words wasn't just Mykelti, it was hers, too. "I blamed myself for a long time," Mykelti conceded. "I was like, maybe if I had been more patient, or less emotional, or if I just didn't ask for anything, maybe then I would have been someone worth showing up for." And that's when the tears began. Not the theatrical ones, but the silent ones that imply something deeper. Some rolled down her cheek. She didn't brush them away. She simply let them fall. "Do you know what it's like," she asked, "to sit in the window on your birthday and hope that maybe today you'll remember? And then to hear from one of Robyn's children that you're watching a movie with them instead?" The judge didn't interrupt her. He didn't have to. No one in the room was leaving. "You told us you were being fair, that we just didn't get how busy you were, that we were fantasizing the difference. But we weren't fantasizing it, Dad. We felt it." Kody appeared to want to say something, but he didn't. He began to open his mouth, then closed it once more. Nothing he could possibly say would erase what had been experienced, and just as the room thought things couldn't get more difficult, Mykelti spoke one additional sentence. "I didn't come here to hurt you," she told him. "I came here to be truthful, because I still love you. That's what makes this so difficult." She turned to Robyn, not in anger, but serenely, "And I don't hate you either. But you need to see what it was like to see my mom. I'd vanish and have you be the only one he would listen to." Robyn's expression broke just slightly. Her lips parted, her eyes softened, but still, no words. "This wasn't just favoritism," Mykelti said. "It was abandonment." And that word, abandonment, landed like a bell, soft, but impossible to ignore. Christine reached for a tissue, and Janelle's hand trembled slightly as she rubbed her thumb across the edge of her chair. It was all coming out now, not just Mykelti's pain, but everyone's. The courtroom was not a house of justice at that moment, it was a house of truth, and for a daughter who'd spent her entire life protecting her heart, watching it shatter over the years, slowly and surely. But broken hearts can be loud enough to alter everything. Maintaining the same grown-up, down-to-earth voice for your viewers, this last section gives a thoughtful conclusion with emotional substance, with the added call for viewer participation at the end through a subtle but firm CTA. For a long moment, the room held its breath. Nobody stood, nobody scrambled to answer, no one voiced an objection. Even the quiet rustle of someone adjusting a chair or folding a sheet of paper had vanished. The courtroom, which minutes before had hummed with tension, sat now in a sort of holy silence, not empty, but packed with everything that had just been uttered, and somehow it was more loud than anything else. Mykelti no longer cried. Her tears had dried, but her words remained. They clung to the air like mist on a morning, suspended until the heat came. She was weary, drained not by the hearing, but by the years it took to arrive at it. Kody's hands remained in his lap. He was no longer posturing, no longer fidgeting. His eyes were cast downward. He didn't say anything. Perhaps he couldn't. Robyn, who had once been so calm and poised, was now shaken visibly, not breaking down, but no longer projecting the image. Her face was gentle, but her eyes, they spoke otherwise. Pain, perhaps even regret, or perhaps only an understanding that this narrative could not be edited or undone. Christine sat next to her daughter, shoulders unclenched. She did not appear angry anymore, maimed, just liberated, like something weighty had at last been let go. Even the judge, normally bound by formality, took a slow breath before speaking. His voice was calm, but not cold. I believe we've heard enough for today, and that was it. The gavel didn't slam. There was no dramatic declaration, just stillness. And yet, everyone in the room knew something big had just happened. Bigger than paperwork, bigger than legal custody, bigger than any headline that might spin out of this tomorrow. This wasn't a hearing in the courtroom. This was the unspooling of a legacy, and perhaps the start of something new. And that silence, that stillness, it communicated more than any verdict ever could. As folks rose to and quietly exited, no one glanced at another person directly. Not yet. The air was too heavy with what had been said, but something had changed. It was undeniable. Kody sat for a moment, not saying anything. Robyn leaned over him once, like she was going to whisper something, but he didn't move. He just sat there, looking forward, at nothing specific. Mykelti exited without glancing back. Not in defiance, not in anger, but in relief, because she had finally set down a weight that was never hers to bear. Christine trailed a few steps behind, hand lightly on the back of her daughter. Janelle came out with them in the hallway. They didn't say anything at first, just gave little glances, little nods, the kind of thing people do when they don't need to use words. And Robyn? She got up quietly, readjusted her purse, and left alone. There were no victors. Nobody left feeling proud or triumphant, but there was something else in the air, truthfulness, something the Brown family hadn't really known in years. And that might have been the true turning point all along. Outside the courthouse, there were a handful of cameras present, but nobody provided statements. The family quietly dispersed, but the drama was far from over, far from it, not for the participants, not for the audience, who'd sat watching for more than 10 years, trying to discern what was true and what was manufactured, and most certainly not for Mykelti, who had come forward not to tear others down, but to end the charade. At times, the strongest thing isn't what you say, it's what you can no longer be quiet about. What do you think? Was Mykelti justified in opening her mouth after all this time? Or was this something that should have remained a secret? Let me know in the comments. I genuinely love to get your opinions. The